Welcome to Tower Talk Business Radio, where we bring you conversations with the top business minds on Long Island and around the nation every week. Featuring expert consultants and small business owners who have found success but are also willing to share their top tips, failures, and give gritty, matter-of-fact advice based on their firsthand experience. Now, let's get down to business on Tower Talk Business Radio on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Hello and welcome to Tower Talk Business Radio, powered by the Nassau Community College Foundation. My name is Ray Schwetz, AVP of Business Banking at Jovia Financial Credit Union, along with Donyshia Boston-Hill, CEO, Keeper of the Brand, Marketing and Digital Agency, and we're focused on being the premier resource for business and entrepreneurship.
We bring you weekly business advice, tips, tools, and services that help you grow your business. Plus, we interview the top business leaders in the industry. Helping provide you with business empowerment today is Steve Sussman, President of the Curriculum Division of Sussman, and Lightswitch Learning's Jared Sands, author and illustrator of Black and Blue. Welcome to the show, everyone.
Thank you.
We're excited to learn about what you do and about the recent book. So, I guess, Steve, why don't you start? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and about how you got started in your business?
No, absolutely, Ray, and thanks for having me on today. We were founded as Sussman Sales Company in 1971. This is our 50th year in business. The company was founded by my parents, Elaine and Joe. My brother, Ron, and I run the business today. And we were into content distribution back then, and we've been doing that for 50 years. But 10 years ago, we decided to get into the publishing business. We saw quite a hole in resources, and we saw a real niche that schools weren't getting. And with our everyday work in New York City schools, that really helped build our publishing company, Lightswitch Learning, 10 years ago.
All right. And tell us a little bit about how Jared fits into things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Jared is an incredible guy that, he's very big in not only the music industry, but has a great passion for comic books and graphic novels, and came up with this incredible idea to work on ideas around social justice for kids, tell the story that we'll talk about in a little bit called Black and Blue, which is about the strife between the police and protesters during Black Lives Matter protests in 2020. Such a timely conversation, and he does such a great job connecting with people about the story. And we're going to do a lot of book talks, speaking appearances with students coming up based on the release of the book recently.
And Jared, we're going to get along because I'm a huge comic book fan, as DB will probably tell you, and I can also tell by the cover. So for our listeners, when you check out Black and Blue, you'll see on the cover there's definitely a comic book influence there, right?
Totally, completely. I'm a big comic book nerd myself. There's a comic book a guy, his name's Scott McCloud. He says comics are just words and pictures. You do anything with words and pictures. So yeah, comics for the win.
Love it.
Absolutely. So Steve, can you tell us a little bit about how does it feel to work in a family business and that's now 50 years old and plus? How does it feel to build that legacy, and what is your vision for the future?
Yeah, it's really exciting. Like any other family business, there are always moments of tension. I would say that's, a single digit percentage of the time, but the other 90+% of the time, it's incredible to be able to sit at the dinner table with the rest of my family and keep them up to speed. My parents have been retired for close to 20 years, but they love hearing how the business has evolved, and they're extremely proud. And there are many people that remember my parents in the business, and my mom also wrote a couple of books for Lightswitch Learning. So that's a way that we're continuing the family legacy and keeping them involved today.
Now, Steve, you touched on the differentiator and the educational roots. Can you go into that a little bit more to give us a better feel for how your publisher is so ingrained in education?
Yeah, and big differentiator for our company. Generally, people are either on the distribution side, on the content distribution side, or on the publishing side. Some publishers will directly distribute their own product, but for a company to not only publish their own product, distribute their own product, but also represent lots of other companies, it allows us to have great breadth of product. And when we walk into a school, or today, more commonly have a Zoom meeting or some sort of virtual meeting with a school, we can really fulfill all of their needs, whether they're core instructional needs, supplemental instructional needs, but also their social emotional learning, their literature. So these relationships become quite powerful. And instead of having to implement 12 different programs and then having to figure out a way to make them all fit together.
And what was that spark, Steve, to launch Lightswitch Learning?
Back in 2005 up to 2010, we were hearing from so many schools in New York City that they were trying to get parents involved in the educational process. The old saying, it takes a village to educate a child. And we said, you know what, we need to, we asked a lot of our partners to get involved in that area. They were a little bit more focused on other types of niches. So we said, you know what, we're going to develop this product ourselves. We started with a parent involvement series. That continues today, 10 years later. That's how it all started. And then about 5 years ago, we got involved with publishing culturally responsive and relevant literature, starting with Cheryl Wills, who's the great Emmy Award-winning anchor and reporter on Spectrum New York One. And she started a whole movement that Jared is a great part of, as are a variety of other minority authors that really are a great voice for inner city kids.
Now, Jared, I'd like to hear a little bit more about your book. Can you tell us some more?
Black and Blue. It's a book that we teamed up with Lightswitch Learning, Sussman Education, which they're great partners. They like you said, they wanted to make culturally resonant stuff. And what's great about the company, or about the publisher, is they see something needs to be said. They find a voice to say it, and they let that person say it. You know what I mean? Like there was no barriers or anything. So, like I said, great partner. And the book itself, it's a grade 6 to 12 a graphic novel. It's about a character named Jackson, who's a young black guy, but he's also a newly sworn officer in the NYPD. And he's having a bit of identity crisis because his first day is the day the George Floyd protests hit. Or not protests, but the George Floyd video hit. And so he starts sort of like, he has to kind of come to reconcile his I guess his job with his community in a lot of ways. And he's kind of torn between his brother, who's an activist, and his fellow officers on the force. And what he can do to kind of make a change. And I think last year it's so I was so outraged and angered and traumatized in a lot of ways that I just wanted to say something about that in a way that that I could, right, through art and all that stuff. And
tell us a little bit about the artwork and how you arrived at your style, and did you do the art entirely yourself, or did you have some help with that?
Yeah, it was on me. I wrote and drew it. It was. I love all the kinds of different forms of sort of like just comic book art, graffiti art. There's so many kind of like inspirations I have. And so I try to bring some of that into the book. It's like I said, it's a book for young people. So you want to make something that has a style that, gets their attention, right? That kind of like shakes them a little bit and really sort of, takes advantage of the medium, art should be expressive. And I hope the book does that.
I'm excited to read it. And I think it's a topic that obviously it's very timely. And it's really great that, you're approaching it from a standpoint of healing and education, because obviously that's what we need, right?
Oh yeah, completely. And like I said, again, that was why, Lightswitch Learning, Sussman Education was such an important sort of factor in that, because that's what they wanted as well, right? So even like in the editorial process of going through the book, they're educators over there, right? So they were very good about letting me know, like, hey, maybe do this and that instead of that, just because, like I said, it's about giving kids the tools to sort of figure this stuff out, right? Not about giving them all the answers, but to say, hey, here are the things you need to process what's happening. And definitely, I was helped through that process by the publisher, which is fantastic.
You are listening to Tower Talk Business Radio on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ray Schwetz, along with Donyshia Boston-Hill, and our guests today are Steve Sussman, the president of the curriculum division for Sussman, and Lightswitch Lightswitch Learning's Jared Sams, and author and illustrator of Black and Blue. Steve, I imagine, do you have like a roster of authors you deal with, or how do you seek the authors that you get to work with?
Wide variety of different ways. Being in the educational field, for example, our first author, after we developed our parent development series or parent engagement series, was Cheryl Wills, and we found out from the director of youth development for New York City that he was so impressed with her autobiography on her freedom fighting ancestor during the Civil War and emancipation. And a lot of times it's word of mouth, or we'll see a news story on someone that really has overcome the odds to really represent students in our underserved communities so they can see themselves in some of these minority subjects who have done great things in a variety of different industries. So there are many different stories of how we've met these individuals. And then people seek us out because they see that that's the way that we publish, and that's our niche.
And Steve, who would you say is your client? Is it B2B, business to business, or business to consumer?
Yeah, so the New York City Department of Education is definitely our number one client. We not only deal with the central office for central initiatives, but also in individual schools within the Department of Education. In any given year, roughly 1,400 or 1,500 of the 1,800 schools will procure programs from us. We work with a lot of Long Island districts. We work with a lot of districts in the Hudson Valley, and we are a national publisher as well. So we do have, especially urban markets, a lot of pockets around the country where our products are used.
I'd like to go back to Jared as well to talk about Black and Blue. How do you see this book being used as a tool for educators? Again, I think it's just a fantastic door opener to some really good conversations. But how do you see it being used?
Well, I think it's just that. It's about starting a conversation, right? Like I said, I think it was important for us to not necessarily come out and say, here are the answers, because, I'm not smart enough to have the answers to these topics. But I think, starting that conversation in a productive way, I think that's something that's important, right? And it'll hopefully get us to a point where, as educators are able to help their students process these events, these traumas in productive ways. The hope is that they'll grow up to be able to solve those problems, or at least not shy away from solving those kind of issues. And also just the book obviously deals with the Black community and policing, but I think there's universal sort of ideas in there about reconciliation, about just how people talk to each other and come together, that I think could also be important in the curriculum.
Yeah, I think you hit home, Jared, on something that was key, which is healing, the process of healing, and also the process of, opening communications across all ethnicities as you come together for, the bigger purpose is to, live together and prosper in life, right?
Right. That's an important thing in this day and age for sure, So yeah, hopefully the book will help that process.
So can you dig deeper a little bit for our audience that is listening and then maybe watching as well, but just a little bit into the storyline about, the two characters, I'm looking at the book cover and the police officer, Dennis, he is a main focal point of the storyline, but can you just speak to, his struggles as well as the struggles that's happening between the two brothers?
It was important, for us to really tell a story that was sort of authentic on every level, right? Not, like I said, Jackson is a newly sworn police officer, but he's kind of like torn between his older brother, who's an activist, and his training officer. His name's Dennis, right? And it was important to kind of get all that right? You don't want to come in and be like, oh, this person's a mustache twirling villain and this person, whatever. You really want to give nuance to all the characters. And so, with Dennis, his training officer, he's just a cop. And there are certain things he doesn't quite understand about what Jackson's going through. And, part of his journey is coming to grips with that himself, right? Whereas, on the other side, you have Jackson's brother, Dante, who is an activist, and, he too is kind of going through a journey. And all those things are sort of informing the decisions and the actions that Jackson himself is sort of going through at the same time. So, yeah, like I said, multi-level sort of character work there that we're going for. We're trying to nail.
And that's why the name Lightswitch is so key, right? Because a light switch must go off in someone's mind as they're reading this, but also as they're working and through life, as they're reading and identifying with the characters, that I can be a Dante or a Jackson, or I can be a Dennis. It doesn't really matter your ethnicity, but you can find yourself in any one of these positions, but you can also learn from them.
Completely. It's, like I said, really honestly, like teaming up with Lightswitch Learning, it was, they had the same agenda as me, right? Like, I've done publishing work before for other companies, and sometimes, it's a crapshoot of what you're going to get, who's running the company, what their agenda is. So it was a gift to team up with a company, a publisher that got it, you know what I mean, and that wanted to put good work into the community.
Now, this question could go out to either one of you. COVID, obviously, a lot of challenging things going on within the last year or two, right? But pandemic in particular. Steve, how has this really affected you? And also, Jared, how has this affected you?
Yeah, it's been an extremely challenging time, not only for our company, but for schools. At least the beginning of COVID. Now it's been a very fruitful time in a lot of ways. During COVID, for example, in New York City schools, in order to make sure that every student had an opportunity to learn at home, all school budgets were swept in the New York City Department of Ed in order to provide iPads for every student. So, schools had a real challenge and a real dearth of materials for a little while until they were able to get more funding in the fall. And then there was an influx of federal funding that came in the last month or so. So that's helped a great deal. We unfortunately had quite a few cuts of staff last year, but this year things have picked up nicely so that we can continue to service schools in the way that we know best. One of the other ways we've supported schools during COVID is one of our authors, a Dominican woman named Kiara Antigua, wrote a book called Kiara and the Virus. It's a bilingual title in English and Spanish, and it talks about a character that's known in her previous picture book and how she thrived during the pandemic. At first, she was very upset about the pandemic. She wanted to see her friends. She was upset about not being able to leave her house. But then she understood that in order to keep her friends and family and others in her community safe, she needed to stay home, and they really made the best of it. So it sends a great message for kids. So that's another book that has a great message similar to Black and Blue and similar to a lot of our other stories.
I do want to say real fast that, I went on made the mistake of going on the Lightswitch Learning website and looking at the other books and getting completely just like self-conscious about how good the other books look compared to mine. I'm like, oh my gosh, like they are dealing with some amazing talent, some great looking stuff over there. But for me, honestly, like I feel like everyone's catching up to me with the pandemic. I usually spend a lot of time at home. So now I just have a good excuse for it. Working super hard to make stuff that people like, kind of thing.
Well, Jared, in case you were getting self-conscious about the quality of your book, just so you know, you've sold over 3,000 copies in the last week. So that should make you feel really good. So I think you're being very modest in this case. Your book is incredible, and it's pretty amazing that it's your first go at being an author. So
I appreciate that. I will say that I think 10% of them was my mom. I want to say 10% of them was my mom, but yeah, awesome.
You are
mom.
Always. You are listening to Tower Talk Business Radio. Our guest today is Steve Sussman, president of the curriculum division for Sussman and Lightswitch Learning, Jared Sam, author and illustrator of Black and Blue. My name is Donyshia Boston-Hill, along with Ray Schwetz and Michael Chung on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. So, Steve, what really went off in your mind when you greenlit Black and Blue? What was your thought process behind that?
We were going through such a challenging time in America, and I feel a little helpless in a lot of ways. I mean, I'm a white Jewish guy from Long Island who, we understand as Jewish people persecution. Luckily, I don't experience prejudice and racism on a daily basis, like I'm sure a lot of Black and brown people do, and even today, it's very sad to see. So I saw a unique opportunity to really go and take an event that was incredibly tragic and sad and get people talking about it and figure out how we can talk about social justice, how we can talk about racial inequities, and how can we, every day I think about how we can support underserved communities and students. That's really the crux of everything that we do and our great clients and administrators and educators and all the schools we work with.
Yeah, I think that's I think that's great. It's so funny. I think actually I've read more in the past year than I had probably in the previous 3 or 4 years. And I'll bet that you guys have probably experienced similar. Is that the case?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, we're always reading. I would say, sometimes it's kind of like more like skimming because we just want to be able to evaluate tons and tons of content. And when we have, probably 1,000+ submissions a year, and it's impossible to read everything, but certain things just jump out at us. And when this idea came to us, it's probably something like, 1 in 100, probably about 1 in 100 submissions, get published or produced in some way. So that's a real coup that Jared on his first attempt found something that was so powerful. And I know for a fact it's going to do incredibly well.
So
I'm
Steve,
excited for you both.
What do you think are some of the good qualities of a good author or a great author? What makes someone stand out from the rest?
You have to have a great story to tell. I think if you look at classic literature or contemporary literature, usually there's someone that's an amazing writer, and then there's someone that's an amazing illustrator, and they come together. And it's so unique to have an author illustrator. So that's number one. So that's a unique piece here that really spoke to us. Number two, a big part of the way that we develop literature is making sure that there's a voice, not just through the story, but through appearances. And Jared is going to do, like I alluded to earlier, he's going to do a variety of book talks and a variety of assemblies with schools so that he can connect with students and they can say, you know what, I can be like Jared. I can write a great book. I can illustrate a great book, and I have a story to tell. And Jared's training is more so in the music industry, but he decided to be creative and become an author, and he did a great job. And a good writer has a good story and shouldn't be shy about producing their story, because we have great editors and copy editors so that you don't have to worry about the little things. You can worry about putting a great story out there.
And Jared, what's your hope for this Black and Blue project? What do you want people to walk away with after they experience either reading the book or, hearing you speak on your book tour?
Like I said, there's so much outrage, there's so much trauma behind all this stuff, and it can feel kind of make you feel helpless, make you feel cynical. I'm hoping people maybe feel a little more empowered after reading this book, that they don't feel like they don't succumb to that cynicism or to that helplessness, right? So yeah, that's the top, right? You just want people to feel engaged and to feel like their actions matter and to feel like their voice matters. And I hope the book will reach young people, especially on that level.
This may be unfair to ask, but so Jared, what's next after Black and Blue?
That's a good question. I got a bunch of projects in the pot. I do comics and other fields outside of education as well. So, it's just continue speaking my voice and, try to reach people through my art. Knock on wood, that I'm able to do that.
How about you, Steve?
We want to do a lot more culturally responsive and relevant content. There's so many great voices out there. We certainly can't publish all of their stories, but there's quite a bit more coming down the pike. it's a combination of creating that new content, but also getting the current content that we have out there so that we can have these great authors and subjects. For example, we have a series called Make It Happen, which is a biography series where amazing subjects that have overcome the odds, their stories are told, and they speak to students about how they've achieved great things in industries, especially maybe an industry like plumbing. We have a Caribbean American plumber named Julian Cassidy. She's one of the first Black women to join the Plumbers Union, has a nonprofit helping women get into STEM careers, especially plumbing. So, there's so many great people out there that, if anyone has a great story that's listening, reach out to Lightswitch Learning, go to our website, and, we'd love to hear your story.
That's fantastic. And I would just like to ensure that we spread the word far and wide about Black and Blue, but also to ensure that people understand that it's not one-sided. It's not a poke at the police. It's to bring people together. So can you just speak to the cover and the graphics, and we'll have final thoughts?
Yeah. I guess, yeah. I mean, like the cover, obviously this is a voice thing, but the cover is sort of the police officer, Dennis Jackson's CO on one side and his brother on the other, and Jackson's right in the middle, which, definitely represents just sort of like the face-off between the Black community and the police, and Jackson in the middle trying to find his way there, kind of thing. And like I said, that's what the book's about, right? It's about trying to figure out, what that equilibrium is, and what needs to be done to get to that point. And so the art lends itself to that. Like I said, like trying to be as expressive as possible, and it's the most colorful book I've ever done, and just like I said, just trying to keep you engaged and interested and thinking throughout the whole process.
Thank you.
It definitely grabs you. I mean, it's a fantastic image. Like I said, I'm very excited to read the book, and just so that we can find you, Steve and Jared, can you give us your information where we can find you on the web?
Yeah, absolutely. Our website for Lightswitch Learning is www.lightswitchlearning.com. If anyone would like to give us a call, 800-350-7180. And then our distribution company is Sussman Education, www.sussmaneducation.com.
And how about you, Jared?
The book is available through Lightswitch Learning, the website there. And, I'm on the social networks and stuff under Spaceman_Jared, if you want to look at my other musings.
Yeah, very excited to check everything out. Thank you. We'd like to thank both of you for joining us today. Steve, Jared, thank you so much for being on Tower Talk today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. I'll leave you with DB's philosophy. Education is the light switch that makes a difference. Lightswitch Learning.
Thank you so much for being with us. My name is Ray Schwetz, along with Donyshia Boston-Hill and Michael Chung, your co-host and producers. This is an NCC Foundation Business Leaders Council production. Visit ncc.edu/WHPC for more information. We're available on iHeartRadio as a podcast on iTunes, Android Podcasts, and Spreaker. This has been Tower Talk Business Radio, powered by the National Community College Foundation on the voice of National Community College, 90.3 WHPC.